Okay, shalom lekulam. I want to share with you, as I promised, to start the class with sharing the screen of the Baraita that the Gemarah analyzed last week. Here. Horulu Beidin Lakor et Kol Haguf. That's a quote from the Mishnah. Yeah? Beidin, I just want to remind, the Mishnah said, the Mishnah said, here. The Mishnah said that if there is a ruling that there is no Shabbos in the world, no Avodah Zarah in the world, then there is no bull brought, okay? Because that is, and they learn it from the verse, V'ne'elam davar v'lo kol haguf. That's what that it will be covered from the eyes of the Sanhedrin, a thing and not the entire body. And therefore, when you uproot, when you were saying no Shabbos, no Avodah Zarah, no Nida, yeah, then there is no public bull brought. And then the Mishnah went on and said that if they said there is Shabbos, but there is but the malacha of carrying from private domain to public domain, it doesn't exist, or there is a prohibition of Avodah Zarah. However, there is one is not allowed to bow. One is allowed to bow to Avodah Zarah. Then there is a public bull. Now I questioned already when we learned the Mishnah at the beginning of last week's shir. I questioned this ruling of the Mishnah, saying that if the logic behind the exemption from public bull is, as was explained by the people 2 weeks ago, that such an ignorance is either an anus or or close to mazid, but it's not a shogeg, meaning a Sanhedrin that is ruling there's no Shabbos, no Avodah Zarah. That's like foundations of Judaism. You know, if this is such a degree of amaratzos, then it's either close to ones or close to mazid, but it won't be shogeg. But then I said, if this is the logic, well, saying that one of the 39 malachot of Shabbos, or one of the 4 main forbidden worships in Avodah Zarah, which are, as I said, Shabbos and Avodah Zarah is an entire concept. I coined it in English, and I said the levels are Shabbos and Avodah Zarah are concepts. The prohibition to bow to Avodah Zarah, or the prohibition to carry from private domain to public domain, or to plow, or whatever, these are categories. It's not just details in Shabbos or in Avodah Zarah. Yeah, these are categories, okay? Whereas there could be details, like saying one is allowed, I gave an example, one is allowed to cook in boiling waters that are not over the fire, okay? That is a big-time mistake. It's bishul, doraita, and yet it's a mistake in a detail and not in the category. It's not that one said there is no prohibition in Shabbos to cook, okay? So I was arguing that the line of argument that said the same logic that said that one, when he uproots the entire body, is exempt because it's either onus or closer, it's not a shogeg, it's close to onus or mazid. Well, that logic applies not only to concepts, but also to categories. However, the Mishnah disagreed with me. Okay, the Mishnah gave as an explicit example where there is a bull. The Mishnah contrasted a mistake in the concept when there's no bull to a mistake in a category, forgetting an entire category within the concept. Here, the Mishnah did call it v'ne'elam davar, something was hidden from them, and they need to bring a public bull. So that was and that brought me to think that maybe, and that's how I formulated when we learned the Mishnah, that maybe it's a little different argument. It's when you're erasing a concept There's no bull simply because it's not even considered a ruling. You should bring on a mistaken ruling, but that's like nonsense. That's as if nothing happened. However, the Mishnah's innovation is that when you make a mistake and you remember that the Sanhedrin remember the concept, but make a big mistake, like an entire category within the concept is concealed from them, well, that is already a ruling. That is already a ruling because they still remember the concept. That is already a ruling, and it is considered a shogeg. Okay, that's the innovation that we saw in the Mishnah. Now, the Braita seems to agree with the Mishnah, but let's read it. Horula Beidin, I'm reading the Braita. First, the Gemarah quotes the row from the Mishnah. Horula Beidin la koret kol aguf. Beidin ruled him to uproot the entire body. That's a quote from the Mishnah. What is the entire body? What I called concept. Shabbos, Nida, Avodah Zarah. Now the Gemara says, Look at that. It's a different wording than the Mishnah. The Mishnah says goof, body. The Baraita says hamitzvah kula. But he's not uprooting.
No, she went shopping. I'm in the mood my shoe now. Bye.
He's not uprooting the entire mitzvah. A thing was concealed and not the entire mitzvah. Ketzad. Now the Baraita gives an example, just like the Mishnah. If they said, the Sanhedrin, there's no Nida in the Torah, there's no Shabbos in the Torah, there's no Avodah Zarah in the Torah, Yachol Yehu Chayavin, I would have said that they're obligated, meaning that there is a public bull, it's a shogeg, it's a false, erroneous ruling, and they bring a bull. Talmud Lamar v'nelam davar v'lo shetit'alem mitzvah kula. Again, it's the same term. Yeah, the Baraita till now doesn't know the term goof. The Baraita till now uses the term mitzvah, and I claim the Rishonim don't comment on it. I claim that it's not coincidental. Okay, v'lo shetit'alem mitzvah kula. Arei elu pturim. So therefore, we have a gzeira sakatov that v'nelam davar is dafka a davar and not the entire mitzvah, a thing within the mitzvah and not the entire mitzvah. Therefore, one that says no Nida in the Torah, no Shabbos in the Torah, there is no bull. Now, here is the seif of the Braita, which is very critical. Aval amru. However, if the Beit Din said, yesh Nida b'Torah, aval abal shomeret yom keneged yom patur. There is a Nida in the Torah, but a lady outside of her period that saw a drop of blood, not in the period, not as part of the period. We know that the Torah ruling is that she needs to be clean for 1 day. But if one says patur, no, she doesn't need. Or no, one who has intercourse with the Shomaret Yom Keneged Yom, one who has intercourse with such a lady that saw only a drop of blood, but out of her period, he says he's exempt. So here, that's a classic example of not forgetting a detail, like saying bishul, but it's erasing a category within the concept. Shomeret Yom Keneged Yom is a category. So if they forgot that there is a category, Yeh Shabbos Patorah, but Amotzi Mershus Hayachid L'Rshus Harabim Patur. There is the concept of Shabbos exists, say the Sanhedrin, but Hotzah doesn't exist. Again, forgot a category, just like the example of the Mishnah. Yesh avodas kochavim b'Torah. There is avodah zara in the Torah, but one who bows to it is patur. And as I said, there are 4 avos, just like there are 39 categories, 39 avos in Shabbos. Cooking, plowing, planting, all these are avos in Shabbos. There's also avos categories in avodah zara, bowing, throwing, shechting. Yeah, there is 4 categories in avodah zara. So he forgot here, the Sanhedrin forgot an entire category in Nida, an entire category in Shabbos, an entire category in avodah zarah. Yachol Yehu Pturim. So the Hava Amina is that they'll be exempt here too. Not only exempt when Akar HaMitzvah Kula, meaning Shabbos, but also here when they forgot a category, I would say that they're Pturim. Talmud Lomar V'nelam Davar V'lo Kol Haguf. V'nelam Davar V'lo Kol Haguf. Meaning, so the Baraita learns if a thing is covered and not all the body, but if the category was hidden, then they're chayiv.
So Rabbi,
yes, this.
Could I just summarize that by saying that this brisa is saying that a category and a detail are identical?
Bidyuk. And in that sense, that is absolutely right. And in that sense, the Baraita, as usual, explicates the Mishnah. They reach the same conclusion. The Baraita and the Mishnah are exactly the same. Only the Baraita, in a more detailed manner, as usual, explains the drasha that led to the bottom line of the Mishnah. Okay? And as Zish said, the bottom line of the Baraita is that a mistake in a category and a mistake in a detail are identical, and a bull is brought. Only a mistake regarding the concept, one does not bring a bull, because v'nelam davar v'lo kol haguf. Now I think the Baraita is very clear and self-explanatory. Let me explain it. And that's why I wanted you to see it visually. What was the Hava Amina here? Yachol Yehu Pturin. You see? Here, do you see everyone that I mark this? Everyone see my marking? Yachol Yehu Pturin. What was the Hava Amina here? The Baraita and the Reisha established that when Beidin are erasing a concept erroneously, entire Shabbos, entire Avodah Zarah, then they're exempt. That was established already in the first half of the Mishnah. And then the Baraita says, however, if they forget a category within the concept, Yachol Yehu Pturin, remember, here the Hava Amina was Yachol Yehu Chayavim. Regarding the entire concept, the question is, maybe they are obligated to bring a bull even when they forget an entire concept. So the Baraita said, no, Benelam Davar, only a thing and not an entire concept. So the Hava Amina was maybe they're also obligated to bring a bull even when they forgot an entire concept. No, the pasuk with the word thing teaches me that only when they forget a thing and not an entire concept. Now, regarding forgetting a category, the Baraita says maybe they will be exempt here. And I explain, Avi Kanai, exempt here too. You said already when they forget the entire concept that they're exempt. Maybe they will be exempt also when they forget a category. And I understand the Hava Amina. The Hava Amina makes sense. Because if you inferred from the word thing, that a thing was covered from them, that is excluding a concept, well, perhaps the word thing, detail, is excluding also a category. Actually, it makes a lot of intuitive sense, this Hava Amina of the Baraita, okay? And when are they bringing a bull? When they are mistaken regarding a detail, like saying that one is allowed to cook on Shabbos on boiling water that are off the fire. That's a mistake in a detail, not in a category. So the Hava Amina of the Baraita is perfectly understood. They're saying after we established that the word davar is excluding from a bull, from an obligation on a bull, is excluding it into a concept, well, perhaps it's also excluding a category, and one brings the bull only regarding a mistake in a detail. And the wording was mitzvah kula, where davar, and not that a mitzvah kula is covered. Well, perhaps mitzvah kula is also a category, like carrying from private domain to public domain. If you forgot this entire thing, that means also that a mitzvah kula was covered and not a davar. That's the hava amina. Talmud lomar v'nelam davar. Davar velo kol haguf. No, we make a correction. The Baraita makes a correction and says the drasha is not davar and not mitzvah kula. If I would have said the wording davar and not a mitzvah kula, well, perhaps it would have excluded a category too, and not only a concept, because a category is also considered mitzvah kula. No, the Baraita says no. Avamina is that you're exempt from a bull also if you forget a category, not only if you forget a concept. Talmud lomar v'nelam davar velo kol haguf, a thing and not the entire body, meaning a concept. And the mitzvah kula, the category is still called davar, a thing. Meaning the thing, the word thing, comes to exclude only concepts and not categories. This is a perfect reading of the Braita. Do you agree with me? It's totally coherent and makes logic and fits in the wordings. However, the Gemara didn't even offer this explanation. And I think the Gemara here is very rhetoric in that sense. I'll explain you. Because I think that if Avi Kanai understood that that's the pshat of the Braita, I find it hard to believe that the Amoraim didn't understand that that's the pshat of the Braita. And yet still they didn't offer it even as an option. They said, the Gemara reads this Havamina of the Seifa, Yachol Yehu Pturin. Yeah, maybe they're exempt not only regarding a concept, but also regarding a category. And the Braita says, huh? I don't understand this Braita. If they're exempt also in a category, so when are they chayav at all? What kind of a Havamina is this? Hello? I'll tell you when they're chayav. They're chayav when it's taken a detail. The Gemara doesn't even want to consider this answer. The Gemara says, you know what was the Havamina here? That maybe they're exempt? Not like Avi Kanai explained, that they're also exempt. Not only regarding a concept, but also regarding a category. And when are they chayav? Only regarding a detail? No. The Havamina was that they're exempt regarding a category, and they're chayav dafka when they uproot the body. Who told you? Who told you that they're exempt regarding a concept and chayav regarding they're exempt regarding a concept and chayav regarding a category? Perhaps it's vice versa. They're exempt regarding a category and chayav regarding the concept. And what was the Havamina? That perhaps the word davar, Havamina here was, Yachol Yehu Pturin, the Havamina was that maybe davar is hadavar, the entire thing, the entire concept. Not thing, but the thing. And the Gemara learns davar and not the entire body. And then the Baraita says, so how do you learn that davar means thing and not the entire thing? What caused the Baraita to decide this way and not that way? And then all kinds of very dochak answers, if you remember. V'ne'elam hadavar, the mem is read both in the front and in the back. V'ne'elam mehadavar, and all kinds of drashos. all kinds of dochaks. And Avi Kanai says, look, the pshat, the word davar is thing and not hadavar. No way that the hava amina here in the Seifa was that they're exempt regarding, that the basis for this question was that perhaps ne'elam, that the basis was that here the Gemara thought that the elam hadavar is the entire body, that dafka you're chayev when the entire concept is uprooted. No, that's not the pshat of the Baita. So what caused the Gemara to deviate so much from the pshat? It is clear that the Gemara is refusing even to consider a distinction between detail and category. It is clear that the Gemara understands that the only exemption is when an entire concept, then it's not even a ruling, as I said. Since the Gemara goes in the logic, that's how I explain it, that the basis for the exemption is not that it's extreme ignorance, but rather because even if it's a big time ignorance, like forgetting an entire category, they still say that you're higher. I agree, it's not as extreme as forgetting a concept. Okay, so that's why it's already under the basket of a mistake and a ruling. It has a valid definition as a ruling, and therefore a bull is brought. It's an erroneous ruling. However, only when you uproot an entire concept, then it's not even a ruling of Sanhedrin. They didn't sit as Sanhedrin and made a ruling. It's just as if nothing happened. And this is so clear to the Gemara that this is the Gemara establishes so much this distinction that the Gemara doesn't even want to consider a distinction between category and detail. It just doesn't acknowledge it all. The Gemara doesn't acknowledge this distinction. Only Avi Kanai did it in his head. It is not acknowledged at all in our papers. It's not even a working assumption, and therefore, when the Gemara is reading the Braita, seeing that there is a hava amina, that they're exempt in a category, well, that means they're also exempt in a detail. So when are they chayiv at all? Okay, that's how the Gemara understood. Now, also interesting to understand this hava amina in the Shakla V'Tarya of the Gemara, that dafka when you uproot the entire concept, the bull is brought. But if you make a mistake in a category in a detail, you don't bring a bull. or exactly the opposite of the conclusion. That was at a certain stage the hava amina of the Gemara. So here, we'll have to say that perhaps the hava amina was that when is a bull brought? When there is a big time mistake, now like no Shabbos, no Nida. That's like it's an extraordinary thing. Dafka there, a bull is brought. But a mistake in what's considered details, and here categories are also considered details, that is, like mistakes that can happen or whatever. But again, it's just a very temporary hava amina that the Gemara doesn't stick to. And the conclusion is uprooting an entire concept. Here, there's no bull brought. However, uprooting categories and details, then a public bull is brought. There is atonement. That's considered an erroneous ruling. Uprooting a concept, it's not an erroneous ruling. It's not a ruling at all. That's how we will understand. Let's continue in the Gemara. So the Gemara, the Gemara now says a new law that is very fascinating. Let's see it. Daled Amud Aleph. Amar Rav Yehuda. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Where is that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 lines from the top of the wide rows. There's a wide rows in the bottom section of Daled Amud Aleph. There are wide rows. So if you count 4 lines up there, you reach Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Ein Beidin Chayavin. Everyone has it? Do you have it? Gabe? Do you have it? Mickey? Daniel?
I have it.
Darren, you have it. Very good. So let's go. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Ein Beidin Chayavin. Beidin are not obligated to bring a public bull. Ad sheyoru bedavar she'ein atzdokin modim bo. Aval bedavar she'atzdokin modim bo, pturin. My taima, zil kari be'ravu. Fascinating ruling by Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, first generation of Amoraim, Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, that Beidin, when is a public bull brought by Beidin? Only when they're making an erroneous ruling regarding a thing, a law that the Tzedokim do not agree with. But if it's a Torah law that there is no argument between the rabbis and the Tzedokim, meaning that Tzedokim agree here. I'll give you an example. Let's say one is not allowed to burn fire on Shabbos. It's an explicit verse in the Torah. Lo tevaru esh b'chol moshvotechem b'yom HaShabbat. Do not burn fire in all your villages on Shabbos. That's the verse. Since it's an explicit pshat verse, that Tzdokim agree with this. That Tzdokim also hold that one is not allowed to burn fire on Shabbos. So, just one more word of background for those who don't know, and even for those who know, who are the Tzdokim? Who are the Tzdokim? The Tzdokim are a group that deviated from the rabbinic Jews when, at the time of the Second Temple. At the time of the Second Temple, there was a big split within Am Yisrael. There was the rabbinical tradition that was called Prushim, and that's what we follow till these days. And there was the Tzdokim, a group led by Tzadok and Baitus, 2 students of Antignos Ish Socho. Antignos Ish Socho was a Tana in the really beginning of the Tanoim. We see it in Ethics of Our Fathers. Still, when the Second Temple is built, he's like a student of Shimon HaTzadik, who was the last one from the Great Assembly. So we're really talking about beginning of the Tanaic era. And Antignos had students called Tzadok and Baitus, and they deviated from the rabbinic tradition, claiming, and basically their claim that was taken up later in the medieval ages by the Karaites, the Tzdokim claimed that one should interpret the Jewish law according to the pshat of the Torah and didn't accept the rabbinic drashot exegesis from the verses. Okay? Basically this. So here, and that's a needed background in order to understand this ruling of Shmuel. Because Shmuel is saying, when are Sanhedrin bringing a public bull for their erroneous ruling? Only when they say a ruling regarding a law that the Tzdokim are not agreeing with. But if they're making a mistake regarding a ruling that the Tzdokim are agreeing with the Jewish halacha, i.e., let's say they're saying one is allowed to burn fire on Shabbos. This is a law. The prohibition to burn fire on Shabbos is a law accepted by the Tzdokim because it's a pshat of a pasuk. So if they make such an erroneous ruling, there is no public bull is brought. Anyone has an idea? The Gemara gives a reasoning for that law. Shmuel Shmuel explains his ruling, gives the reasoning for it. But before looking at what he says, you tell me, what could be the logic behind such a ruling? That if the Sanhedrin make a public mistake, an erroneous ruling regarding a law that is accepted by the Tzedokim, no bull is brought. What do I care about the Tzedokim?
I think if the Tzedukim know about it, everybody agrees to it. And then it's like being oker the entire guf hadavar.
Look, listen carefully to what Zish said. Zish said, you know, after all, this is a law brought by an Amora, Shmuel, first generation of Amoraim, yeah? Mamash close to Rebbe, okay? But Amora, okay? Rabbi Yehuda, second generation, is saying it in the name of first generation of Shmuel. We never saw such a law, this law that a public bull is brought only regarding a mistake that the Tzdokim, regarding a law that the Tzdokim do not accept. This law of an Amora created, Shmuel, it doesn't appear in the Mishnayos. It's his innovation. The Mishnah only says that you're exempt from bringing a bull. Sanhedrin are exempt from bringing a bull if they're uprooting an entire concept, right? That's what we saw in the Mishnah. We didn't see this formulation of what the Tzdokim agree or disagree. Comes Zish, and that's a direction in the Rishonim that Zish said. The Rambam, I think, goes in your direction. Zish says, you know how Shmuel inferred this notion? It's just an explication. He derives it from the Mishnah. Shmuel understands that making a mistake regarding what the Tzdokim agree with is like uprooting an entire body, an entire concept. Why? Why is that identical? L'chora, here I gave you an example, fire on Shabbos. It's not a concept, it's a category. Okay? So how come you claim that it's the same thing? You had a reasoning, say it. I'm just clarifying what you said, Zish. I'm not, meaning technically, I'm now challenging Zish. I'm saying, l'chora, it's not the same thing. Technically, I'll say not l'chora, technically it's not the same thing. Because the Tzdokim sometimes agree with us, not only regarding concepts, but also regarding categories, if we'll use my formulations. Yeah, like fire on Shabbos is a category, and yet still, this will fall under the basket, giving a ruling regarding what the Tzdokim agree upon. But I think you still had here a strong intuition. I told you, I think the Rambam goes in your way. So what was your argument? Why do you see it as concept? You see it conceptually as a concept. Why? You said it in your words. Just repeat it.
What I said was that everybody, in other words, the basic thing is, if a person follows Bezdin, should he follow Bezdin if Bezdin says something which is crazy, which is ludicrous? So if they say to abolish an entire concept, an entire mitzvah, entire Shabbos, people who follow them can't say that they followed
Okay.
because of a decent ruling.
And what about Tzedok? A thing that it's Tzdokim agree upon, and sometimes the Tzdokim agree not only regarding concepts but also regarding the categories. Let's say.
But the Tzedokim get things directly from the written Torah, and that all Jews know about. Everybody agrees to what the Tzedokim say.
So what Zish wants to say, even though I made here a trick, I tried to trick Zish. And I said, here, you see, there is a verse regarding fire, and that's only a category, not a concept. But no, fundamentally, conceptually, Zish says, it's the same reasoning. That's the point. The same logic that brought the Mishnah to say that if you erase an entire concept, no bull is brought. The same logic applies, regarding when a ruling that the tzdokim agree upon. Because the tzdokim, the criteria is, I don't care really about the tzdokim. They're just a lakmus paper regarding things that are evident from the written Torah with no further explication. And therefore, if Beit Din are making a mistake regarding this, it's like, says Shmuel, it's like uprooting an entire concept. It's something too evident. Okay? Now, as I explained, so that's an option. Now, Zish, in his wordings, in his last wordings, Zish focused more on the responsibility of the people, meaning no public bull is brought, because if Beit Din ruled there is no Shabbos, or they ruled against an explicit verse in the Torah, like burning fire on Shabbos, if this happened, no individual can say, hey, I just followed the erroneous ruling of Beit Din. That's interesting. And that is the reason to exempt the Beit Din from bringing a bull, okay? You'll still then have to ask, why aren't the individuals here need to bring in the individual chatat, okay? Because according to your logic, I would expect them to be obligated, and we don't see that explicitly, at least. It just said that there's no public bull brought in such a scenario. Now, we also tried to explain why Beit Din, till now we tried to explain why Beit Din are exempt. So we had really, our first thing that we said 2 weeks ago was exactly in the line of Zish's reasonings, meaning that it's such an extreme ignorance that it's either close to anus or close to mazid, and it's not a shogeg. You can't define this shogeg, such a amaratzis, uprooting an entire concept, or making a mistake regarding a thing that the tzdokim agree with. By the way, the wording of the Gemara is, my tama, I'm now one line above the wide rows, my tama, why there's no public bull brought. There's no public bull brought when they make a mistake regarding a thing that the tzdokim concede to. My tama, zilkari ve'ravu. Every little kid knows this. Every little kid knows it. Zilkari ve'ravu. Everybody knows this law. Okay? So how does the fact that everybody knows this law causing the exemption from the bull? So here again, it's either that we focus like Zish on the people, no public bull is brought because the people are responsible. Zilkari ve'ravu. It's someone that, or as I say regarding Beit Din, it's such a amaratzis that you can't define it as a shogeg, just like we said regarding uprooting the entire body. However, as I've shown you in the first half of this year, l'chora, even regarding pretty basic mistakes, a bull is still brought. Like Beit Din that are saying that one is allowed to bow to avodah zarah, a bull is brought. And that's a pretty big time mistake, okay? So, therefore I concluded that the criteria was not an extreme mistake, but rather such a fundamental mistake that it's considered that there was no ruling here. Someone that says there is avodah zarah, but one is not allowed to bow, it's a big time mistake, but I could still define it as a ruling. But if Sanhedrin forgot that there's avodah zarah at all and said there's no avodah zarah, that's not even a ruling. That's as if they said nothing. That's how we explain the conclusion of the Mishnah and the Braita. According to this, we'll have to say that what Shmuel is claiming is that when you're making a ruling regarding a law that the tzdokim agree, since it's pshat of the Torah, this is not a ruling at all. Again, This is as if they said nothing. They're contradicting a pshat pasuk in the Torah. You can't call it a ruling. And therefore, even if it's regarding a category, it's fine. Okay? So, the thing is, in conclusion, there is a machloket Rambam and Tosfos, whether when they say a thing that the tzdokim, one is obligated to bring a bull only regarding a ruling that the tzdokim disagree with, whether he's just explaining what the Mishnah said, it's the same thing. It's a concept, a mistake regarding a concept. Or no, Tosfot claims it's two different laws. It's two different laws. Okay, technically, we can show that it's a different law, as I said. But maybe even conceptually, maybe, and here I'm saying it as a maybe, or Lichtenstein offered it as a maybe ruling against what the tzdokim, ruling a ruling that it's regarding a law that even the tzdokim accept. This is not a ruling, Bechlal, because you're contradicting an explicit verse in the Torah. However, erasing a concept here, and especially when the concept is not that explicit, here, maybe will just be a law that says you're exempt from a bull, but it's not that it's not a ruling. By the way, I think that I can show even, I can say the opposite of what Rav Lichtenstein said. That uprooting a concept is something that every Jew knows, okay? Traditional Jew, doesn't matter if it's written in the Torah or not, and that is not a ruling. However, if you're ruling against even against the verse in the Torah, well, perhaps the Amaratzis even applies to the written Torah. So logically, I could say either way. And I could say, of course, that, and I can also support Rav Lichtenstein saying that when you contradict an explicit verse in the Torah Shebechtav, then inherently this cannot be defined as a ruling. Just cannot be defined as a ruling. Okay, Beseder. So Ad Kan, we've seen this. Okay, well now before we continue in the Gemara, I told you I quoted here a Rambam and a Tosfot. Let's see them inside for a second. Here, one sec. Here, Tosfos, as I said, want to differentiate, as opposed to Zish, they want to differentiate between the two laws. The law of Shmuel, regarding whether the tzdokim agree with or not, and the law of the Mishnah, uprooting an entire concept. Kemo pito me'anusato, deleit lu gzira shava, o em chami ve'em chamoto. Umatniti nakat, denakad nida v'shabes v'avodas kochavim, lama shum da'ana hu davka kai, ela rak lefarish kiyu miktzat naktinu. Okay, Tosfos give some examples. Oh, wait a minute, maybe I prematurely stopped sharing. 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What Tosfot is trying to claim, Tosfot is giving examples of all kinds of arayos, that he sees them as an entire body, an entire concept, and yet still they're learned not from explicit verses. Tosfot says, L'chora Shmuel, because, you know, the first question that Zish actually answered, even though he didn't mean to answer, implicit in Zish's words was an answer to a troubling question. I said, where did Shmuel get his din from? You're in Amora. The din of the Mishnah was learned from a verse, V'ne'elam davar v'lo kol haguf. What's your source for saying that? The one answer will be, according to Zish, the answer will be the same verse. Everything that the tzdokim agree with is considered a concept because it has an explicit verse in the Torah. Even the fire on Shabbos, now I'll define it not as a category, but I'll define it as a concept. Why? Because it's an explicit verse in the Torah. Okay? Erasing an explicit verse in the Torah is like erasing a concept. Therefore, v'ne'elam davar, a thing, and not an entire body. That is one option. But Tosfos, and I can understand them, didn't understand that way. They said Shmuel's din was not based on the verse v'ne'elam davar. Shmuel's din was based on a svara. Zil kari be'rav. Yeah, it's explicit in the Gemarah, what the Tosfos says. My taima, the Gemarah asks regarding Shmuel. Shmuel continues, what is my reason? He should have said, my reason is v'ne'elam davar. No, he gives a different reason than the reason the Mishnah gives to the Mishnah's din. My taima, zil kari be'ravu. So whereas regarding uprooting the body, we have Gemarah sakatov, davar v'lo kol haguf, a thing and not the entire thing. However, regarding the law of Shmuel, no verse is brought in support, but a reasoning is brought, a svara. This is so trivial, it's not a shogeg. Yeah, or according to Zish, the people are responsible. So Tosot noticed the fact that the reasoning is different. And therefore Tosot asked, why didn't the Mishnah give the reason of Shmuel? Why did the Mishnah need the Gemarah sakatov? V'ne'elam davar. The Mishnah could have said, zil kari be'rav. One who says there's no Shabbos, there's no Nida, it's amaratzas. The Mishnah didn't say that. Why? Because the Mishnah brought Nida and Shabbos only as examples, says Tosfos. But there are concepts like samarayos that are not that are learned only from drushos, and they're still concepts. And therefore, you need this Gemarah sakatov of davar v'lo kol haguf. So Tosot clearly make a distinction between these two things. However, Maimonides, let's see if he quotes him. One second. Oh, no, he doesn't bring here the Rambam. Let me see if in the book he brings the Rambam. 1 second, please. We're almost done. Yeah, the Karanoira, Karanoira is one of the famous Achronim. He understood in the Rambam that it's the same law, and that actually the definition of davar, an entire davar, an entire body, and not a thing, is defined according to the criteria of whether the tzdokim agree with or not. Exactly as I said. Lo tevaru esh b'chol mushputechem b'chol Shabbat is a goof. The Rambam made an identical equation. The Tosot do not. Now, the only thing that is left, our svara, that if they disagree with something that the tzdokim admit that it's not a ruling b'chlal, it's nothing, get support from the Gemara in Sanhedrin, and we'll finish with that. Here. Dinei Mamonos, the Mishnah in Sanhedrin says, Machzirin bein lezchut bein lechova. if there was a court, three dayanim that gave a ruling regarding a monetary disagreement. So it says that if they recognize that they erred, then they are returning the discussion and they are changing it, whatever side it is. Dinei nefashos, machzirin lezchut ve'en machzirin lechova. Regarding dinei nefashos, okay, regarding capital punishment rulings of Sanhedrin, judgments of Sanhedrin, if they make a mistake that they convicted someone that is really innocent, then they, of course, return it back. However, if they, how do you say nezakot? It's the opposite of convicting. Yeah, the opposite of convicting, how do you say that?
Acquitting.
If they acquitted someone inadvertently, mistakenly, they will not, he gained, they will not return, they will not call the court again and roll it back and convict him. That's the ruling of the Mishnah. That regarding capital punishment, we'll never return the discussion in order to convict. Now, the Gemara, that's the Mishnah. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says, okay, you don't return the discussion in order to convict if you acquitted. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Rabba Amar Rabbi Yochanan, v'hu shedava ta'a bedavar she'ein tzdokin modim bo. Aval ta'a bedavar she'tzdokin modim bo, zil kare be'ravu. The same terminology that we have here, zil kare be'ravu. They say, it's only if they made a mistake and acquitted him regarding something that the tzdokim are not agreeing upon. But if it's such a stupid mistake, they acquitted him based on a stupid mistake. Why stupid mistake? Because it's a thing that the tzdokim even accept. And regarding such a basic thing, there was a mistake. Then they return it even to convict. Why? Because this Zilkari Beirav, this is nonsense. Everyone knows that. So what do we see? We see here clearly that it's how come, even though the Mishnah said that a ruling that was to acquit is not reversed, this is not considered a ruling. It's not a psak din at all. Exactly like what we see here. So we have here a very strong support from this Gemara in Sanhedrin that this criteria of tzdokin just serves to say that no ruling was brought when Beiting are making a judgment and a psak in court. It's not considered a psak at all. It's as if nothing happened. Therefore, no bull is brought. And why is it considered that way? Because Zilkari Birab, it's an explicit verse in the Torah. You can't contradict or make a mistake regarding an explicit. When you're doing such a thing, this is not baiting, this is not a ruling, this is nothing. Now, of course, as Rav Lichtenstein claims, regarding exactly what Zish raised, what I asked, will the individual, in such cases, will have to bring individual chatas? Okay, so here, it exactly depends, as Zish said, exactly what's it. If it's not a ruling at all even, then you can't have the exemption. You understand the logic? That's my last wording for today. But here, please listen, even those who got lost, this will be a very clear formulation. Let's say Sanhedrin gave an erroneous ruling regarding a law that even the tzdokim agree upon. Okay? So here we said it's not even defined as a ruling. It's so basic. It's against an explicit verse in the Torah. Here, the individual that followed them, as Ish said, cannot say, I have an exemption because of onus. You're not an onus. It's a verse in the Torah. Or, I have an exemption because I'm included in the category, halachically, of public ruling, right? Remember that we said that it's Gemarah Horayot and erroneous, that even if for some reason, technically, the Sanhedrin are not bringing a bull, yet still, if it still has a potential to bring in a public bull, yeah, meaning it's excluded from the category of individual mistake, and it's a category of because the majority of the people of it, it's considered a public mistake. Well, here also we'll say no, because there was no public ruling. There was nothing. You're not excluded from the category of individual mistake. It's not a category of public mistake because there was no public ruling here. Nothing. It's as if nothing happened. However, if I understand, let's say regarding uprooting the entire body when it's not an explicit a concept, when it's not explicit in the verse, if I'll say, look, it is considered a ruling, only no bull is brought. There is Gemarah Horayot, davar, and not the entire body. If this is the case, well, here the individual can say, I'm excluded from a category from individual chadas. This is in a category of public mistake, not of individual mistake, because it is defined as a ruling, as a public ruling. Only no bull is brought, but it's a ruling. Okay? So these two, the question whether it's defined as a ruling, and that is why a bull is not brought, or a bull is not brought just because of Gemarah Horayot, has an implication regarding whether the individual, in such a case, will have to bring individual chatas or not. Okay, Havanim, we'll continue next week. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.